Well, first of all, thank you very much for having us. We did hear that it was a bit of a hectic week at Niantic, so thank you very much for taking the time out of your day.
No, thank
Um,
you for inviting me. And then, yeah, I wish I could spend more time just uh, answering questions in the forum or just being more present in the community. But I do read all of the feedback that comes in through either the subreddit or the forum. I have all of the Play Store reviews, the App Store reviews just piped directly into my inbox. So I do
okay.
consume a lot of the feedback. I just don't have as much time to be as vocal on the kind of closing the loop side. So that is something that, like, duly noted. I know communication is uh, has been an issue and continues to be an issue, but we are aware and we are trying to work on improving it. So I hope this kind of a call, it's something that I've been trying to do with the first Saturdays of just
Mm.
jumping into random first Saturday chats to kind of answer some questions. But I did just want to say thank you, one, for uh, putting this call together, for bringing the people together, and then also thanks for all the questions.
No problem. I would just jump right into it because I am very bad at small talking. Yeah, well, question one. When doing balance changes to the game, like for example now with COVID going on, where do you start? Do you start with a goal? For example, when the drone came along, how did you think about how to use it basically?
Yeah, a lot of the balance changes we're looking at, um, for example, usage goals. Where are our daily actives or monthly actives at? What are players actually doing in the game? How does that affect the game economy? How does it affect, retention? So with new players coming in versus some of our more hardcore or older veteran players, there are different cohorts or different kinds of players or personas within the user base. And so we
Mm-hmm.
do look at all of those things. With the COVID knob specifically, I guess the added layer on top of that was just the changes that we make in Ingress are global changes. So um, the COVID pandemic is affecting different places in different ways. There are some places that are more locked down than others. Um, and so when we make a change, we're trying to take into account, um, you know, how do we make sure that players are able to play safely and still able to play? So
Mm-hmm.
that's some of the considerations where I think if we had more granularity and we could say, in these specific areas, this is how the game works. In those specific areas, it works differently. That could be something that we should look into. The way that we treated, for example, the Battle Beacon playtest, where it only worked in initially New Zealand and Taiwan, and then only in Taiwan. The only way that we were able to do that specifically is by working directly with the vanguards and directly with players to grant those battle beacons in those places.
Mm-hmm.
Once we actually shipped the battle beacon feature live, now it's live for everyone, or I should say for players with 40 million AP and higher, but available globally
Mhm.
everywhere.
Mm.
So those kind of knob changes, trying to balance that out in light of the pandemic has been really challenging or really tricky to try to thread that needle.
Mm. Well, Carlo, will you the next question?
Yeah, sure. So with the advent of Ingress Prime, we had this new amazing feature, which is the possibility to change the avatar on the map from the classic triangle to also these new four archetypes we got. So spiritualistic, skeptic, alchemist, and dreamer. I think Ishira loves this possibility too very much. There is a lot of curiosity from the players. If the other nine archetypes that we know in the lore are also coming to the game, and if they're coming.
Yeah. So, I mean, this goes back to the previous question about looking at the usage metrics, or in this case, like how many of those custom avatars or there's new avatars actually got purchased, and then
Mhm.
weighing that with how much time does it spend or how much time does it take us to actually develop those new features or those new items. And so with the avatars that we had, there's certainly some that were a lot more popular than others. So for example, like NL1331, that was really popular. Something like
Same.
the avatars that were kind of more of like the D20, kind of the skeptic, or the different nemesis kind of archetypes, they were not as popular. And so we try to weigh that with, if we're going to spend, X many days working on these new assets versus trying to fix some of the longstanding issues in the game, that's how we're trying to prioritize. So it's not so much will we or won't we do them. It's more about when should we try to tackle that feature request or that item. So we don't always get the prioritization right. I think some people have asked about, why did we spend time working on this feature instead of working on that feature? So it is something that we're constantly kind of monitoring the feedback, monitoring the different metrics, or the different kind of, I think that the question from previously was kind of more about the game performance or the game metrics. So we look at all of those things and then try to decide if we need to shift the priority of things or reorder the priority of things. I think that also there's kind of a related question to that of making sure that the team is actually listening to players. And so we are listening, but it's also the flip side, or the kind of probably more important step of like actually carrying through and then addressing that feedback and having those changes happen in the game. So I know, like, one example would be there are a lot of requests every time that we post our release notes about high frame rate mode, or like a 60 FPS mode in Ingress. And so I do see all of those requests, but it's balancing, should we spend the engineering time and the QA time and the testing time on trying to create that high performance mode, or should we spend that same amount of time and those resources on, hey, we know that COM needs fixes, and we've tried multiple times to fix COM. I've tried to go, at least at a high level, into some detail of why that's been so difficult for us to fix and why it's taken so long. But that's the kind of discussion that we have on the team about, okay, this is what we should work on next. It's not usually, no, we will never ever do this thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it absolutely makes sense. It makes sense that there are things in the, I will call it, queue of new features to implement in the game that have the higher priority or lower priority.
Yeah, and the interest involved in it, because I may want all of those archetype, but I'm a lore person, and there's not as many of us as there are players. So
yeah. And it is also like an ever-changing list. So new things get added. Some things may end up getting punted or removed. And also that priority list changes. Like sometimes we get some feedback from, for example, our leadership team, or we get feedback from vanguards that changes the order that we do things. So that's how we kind of try to approach that. I should also just make a note, because I think, so Tobias had shared, here's some questions that we had. And so I have read through those, but if you don't have to go in that order, or you don't have to go with that explicit list. I'm happy to just have a conversation with y'all about, what you're interested in Ingress. So
okay,
yeah,
awesome.
We're very happy to go with that, because for me and Tobias especially, it's kind of the first time we do an interview, a proper interview, and we're not very fluent with English. So
I have to say I'm fluent, but I don't like my pronunciation. Yeah. So I'm a little bit anxious. So
yeah, your pronunciation is perfect. I understand you perfectly. I am kind of curious if you actually look like this. I don't know. I don't know what
he doesn't. He doesn't look like that at all.
I do not know what you mean. It's my best picture I have.
He's the tethered hand.
Chef.